now let's see some of the common mistakes which usually students do related to chapter 14, and we will also check some common question which will appear in your exam. So the chapter 14 is about metals, the metallic elements and their alloys. And the question that usually appear in the exams are related to the alloy. From this chapter, you will see most of the question will be related to the alloys, and some of the questions can be related to the properties or the use of the metals. Okay. So now let's see first question, use of metals. The use of metal depend on their properties. Which property is necessary for the use given? Okay. So we will see one by one each property. The use of metal is also in the car bodies. Why we use them in the car bodies? Because they are strong and they are malleable. We can change their shape of the metals. Okay. So that's why they are used in the car bodies. But here they write ductile. Ductile is a property of metal that they can be changed into wires. But in the car is not a wire, right? So this option is wrong. If they write here the wire, then this option will be right. Okay. Why we use metal in wire? Because they are ductile. But here in the car bodies, because they are malleable, that's why we use them in the car bodies. Now let's see about cutlery. So why we use them in the cutlery? It's not about conducting the heat, because cutlery is just because we want to use them for eating purpose, right? They are not the pots. Cutlery is not a pot. So cutlery, why we use them for eating, for all our like dishes? Why cutlery is made up of the metal? Because they are resistant to corrosion. So that's why most of the metals are resistant to corrosion. So that's why we use them. So this option is wrong here. Now, food containers. The use of metals in the food containers is that because some of the metals are resistant to corrosion. That's why we use them. So yes, this option is the right option over here. Overhead electric cables. We use metals also in the overhead electric cables because they are very low in density. Some metals are low in density. We use them in the electrical cables overhead. Okay. So not the earth cables. We are talking about the overhead cables. So their density is low. That's why we use. So this option is also now wrong. So we are only left with the option C. Okay. So option C is the right option. Okay. Now let's see another question. Question 45. What is the symbol of the metal used in the manufacture of aircraft because of its low density? Okay. So which of the metal is the low density? If you are confused in these options, you can just simply remember that transition metals have the highest density. Okay. So if you see, all of them are transition metals except aluminium. So that's why aluminium is usually used in the manufacture of aircraft because of its low density. That you have to remember. But even if you get confused and the options are, all of them are transition metals and only one option is not a transition metal, then that's the obvious option you have to choose. That is aluminium. Okay, aluminium is the right answer for this question. Now let's see 46. Which statement about alloys is correct? This is one of the most common questions that usually appear in the exam. And what are alloys? To remember that alloys are actually the mixture of two or more metals, or maybe metals and non-metals. So it is a mixture, not a compound. Remember that. Okay. So let's see now the options. Alloys are pure metal elements. Wrong, because it's a mixture. So it is not a pure metal. At least two or more metals react together to make alloys. So this wording is wrong because it is a mixture. They don't react, they just mix with each other. So this option is also wrong. Alloys can be harder and stronger than a pure metal. Yes, this is a right option. Why we make alloys? Because sometimes metals are very soft, and to use them for different purpose, we mix them with other metals or any other non-metal to make them more hard and strong. Okay, so then these alloys will be more useful than their actual metals. So that's why this option is the right option. Let's see D. Steel is not an alloy because it contains the non-metal carbon. That's wrong. I already have given you the definition that alloys are made by the mixture. Okay, it's a mixture of metal and non-metal, or it can be a mixture of two metals. So that's why this option is also wrong. Steel is also an alloy. So option C is the right option. 47. The diagram represents the structure of a solid. Which solid does the diagram represent? So it's simple. Alloys, I already have told you, there is a mixture of two or more elements, right? that these elements can be, at least one of them will be a metal and the other one will be a non-metal. So if you look at the structure, of course, it will not be a sodium chloride because it's an ionic compound, so there should be ions. But let's see for graphite and brass, because they are made up of atoms. Brass is an alloy. It's a mixture of two or more metals, right? So brass is actually made up of zinc and copper. So can you see here that we have two different types of the atoms, okay? So it means the correct option is brass. Why not graphite? Because graphite is only made up of carbon atoms. So all the atoms should be same. But here we can see two different types of the atoms, one in white color and the other one in gray color. So it means it is actually a mixture. So which one is a mixture? That is brass. So option B is the right option. It's a brass, not a graphite and not a sodium chloride. Okay, so option B is the correct option. Let's see another question. Which row compares the strength of alloy with the pure metals and explain the difference in the strength? Okay, so the alloy's strength of an alloy is always stronger. That's why we make alloys, because alloys are more stronger than their actual or the pure metals from which they are made up of. Okay, so they are stronger. Now what is the, how we can explain their strength? Because the large atoms slide more easily over small atoms. No, that's not right. Okay, when there are two different types of the atoms and the atom size are different, then it is very difficult for the layers to slide over each other. Okay, so the layers cannot easily slide over each other. That's why alloys are harder and stronger, okay, than their pure metals. So larger atoms make it harder for the layers to slide over one another. That's why this option is the right option, option D. 49. Steel is an alloy of iron. Which statement explain why steel is stronger than iron? Now again, why steel is stronger than iron? It is because now we have two different types of the atoms present in this alloy, in the steel, right? So when we have two different sizes of the atoms, one is iron, the other one is carbon, then it will be very difficult for the layers to slide over each other. That's why it will be more stronger. So can we see any option that have layer in the word layer in it? Yes, option D. The carbon atoms prevent the layer of iron atoms from sliding over each other. So this option is the right option, okay? So that's why option D is the correct option. 50. Brass is an alloy that is formed from copper and zinc. Which statement is correct? Brass, copper and zinc all conduct electricity. Yes, this is right. The alloys of the metals also can conduct electricity. Brass is a compound of copper and zinc. This is a wrong option. It is a mixture. Alloys are the mixture of the metals or metal and non-metal. They are not the compound, okay? So this option is wrong. Brass is harder than zinc. Yes. The alloys are always harder than their pure metals. So option 1 and 3 are the only right option. That is C. Most of the students usually do the mistake by thinking that alloys are compound. No, alloys are mixture. You have to remember this one. So that's why option 1 and 3 is the right option. That is option C. Let's see question 51. Which description of brass is correct? It's a compound. Wrong. It's a mixture. Yes. So this option is right. Now it's a mixture of what? Brass. You have to remember it's a mixture of copper and zinc, not tin. Okay, copper and zinc. So option C is the right option.